Welcome back to the 2015 Fantasy Flight Games Armada World Championship. I'm Alex Davey.
And I'm Nathan Karpinski.
We've got a really exciting final match for you here. It's Rebels versus Imperials. We watched Johnathan Reinig play out his match last round. He is near the top of the heap here. He's in second place right now with 32 total tournament points, going up against Francisco Berna Menendez with 36 points. So the winner of this game very likely will claim the top spot in the World Championships, unless it ends up being a bloodthirsty draw and someone creeps up from behind. But it's very likely here that we're looking at the final top two contestants in the world. Johnathan, of course, bringing that 8 A-Wing, 2 Assault Frigate Corvette list, and he's up against the so-called Gen Con Special. Francisco has a Victory 1 Star Destroyer, Admiral Screed, 3 Gladiators with Assault Concussion Missiles, and one of those Gladiators is armed with the Fearsome Demolisher title. So we should have a very tense, interesting match for you here today.
Due to the scoring works, although these players, this is the top table, these guys are at the top of the list, it's not guaranteed lock that one of these guys will be the overall champion. Depending on how the points play out on this table and the second place table with the third and fourth players.
Yeah, there are 2 other players who could easily come back from behind here. Royal Tippets is sitting at 30 points, and Francois Frisson is sitting at 30 points as well. Some 29s and 28s down there too. So really anything could happen here. But if one of these players, particularly Francisco, is sitting pretty at 36 points, if he can get a win here, he's pretty much guaranteed himself the World Championship title.
Yeah, it's time to pull out all the stops. No one has any kind of further meta considerations in the tournament.
Nope, time to get as many points as possible in that final game.
Everybody's going for the biggest win that they can get.
And interestingly, both Francisco and Johnathan placed in the top 16 in the X-Wing World Finals. So these are fierce competitors in both of our Star Wars miniature space combat games. Meeting again here in the world of Armada. Should be a very interesting game. In terms of initiative bid, Francisco's list comes in at 298 points. And Jonathan's list comes in at 296 points. So Johnathan will be able to decide whether he wants to seize the initiative and choose from Francisco's objectives, or whether he wants to let Francisco take the initiative but be forced to choose from his objectives. And interestingly enough, Jonathan's contested outpost objective ended up getting more points for his opponent last game, so I'm wondering if he's going to maybe change his mind up here and grab the initiative this time around. It'll be interesting to find out what choice he makes.
And anytime there's a demolisher on the table, letting your opponent have the initiative is a scary prospect.
Very, very dangerous. Of course, Johnathan won his last engagement against a fleet, a very similar fleet with the demolisher in it. Of course, he's got one additional ship to face this time around, and that could prove telling. It's a gamble if he gives up the initiative this time around. I suspect he may take it. We'll stay tuned. We'll tell you what objective gets selected once the players have finished examining each other's fleets and the game gets rolling.
Yeah, so it's a similar matchup to last time, but rather than having loaded up Imperial fleet with lots of upgrades, they have minimal upgrades, just the assault concussion missiles that Screed can really capitalize on, and a whole nother Gladiator, which could make all the difference.
But he will be flying without engine techs, and as we saw last game, the engine techs on Demolisher proved critical in catching Garm Beliblis and blowing him up. So more ships on the board, but the ships themselves will be a little less flexible, a little less powerful.
So in this Imperial list, there's nothing that can match the speed of that Corellian Corvette.
No, that Corvette is going to be, I think, a bit harder for Francisco to catch. And I think Johnathan may have learned his lesson from the last game about exposing Garm to that kind of firepower. But it's going to be a very interesting game here. Once again, we have a list that is designed around squadrons coming up against a list that has eschewed squadrons in favor of pure ship firepower. This is really the list to beat. The so-called Gen Con special has proven very, very formidable here in Wave 1. But I think that Johnathan's going to be well positioned to capitalize on that lack of squadron play. We saw what he did last game. Garm lets him stack up a bunch of tokens in the early play, and then he can use those A-wing swarms like just a cloud of bees to nibble away at the enemy ships. We saw the A-wings almost single-handedly take down 2 gladiators last game, and once again they will have very little to fear from Francisco's list. Does not have much in the way of anti-squadron firepower, so those A-wings will be largely unanswered. Should be a very, very interesting game.
I think another potential advantage that Johnathan might have is he was expecting to face a Gen Con special at least some point. He has to have practiced against it, whereas Jonathan's own list is a little unusual.
Yeah, it's atypical.
And Francisco might not have seen this before.
Absolutely. And it looks like Johnathan has, I think, wisely chosen the initiative. I think losing out on the initiative last game actually cost him in terms of victory points, even though he was able to secure a win. This time around, he's got a tough choice in front of him. Francisco's objectives are advanced gunnery, fire lanes, and intel sweep. Advanced gunnery, not something you want to see if you are up against Victory-class Star Destroyers, certainly. But then again, the assault frigate makes a pretty good platform for that as well. Fire lanes, the gladiators are probably going to be able to throw more dice out from their battery armaments. Now, it looks like he's checking the cards over. Intel sweep also dangerous because of the sheer number of ships that Francisco can bring to bear. He is going to have the lead in any sort of objective claiming mission that involves grabbing multiple tokens. I wonder if Johnathan is going to choose advanced gunnery here. Maybe some slight confusion about objectives here, but it looks like they're getting it sorted out.
So if it is intel sweep, what do you think the best choices are for the objective ship on each side? I would say the Corvette for the Rebels is the most maneuverable. It can fly around and get those objectives the quickest, but that's also his Admiral and potentially taking damage when he moves over obstacles.
Yeah, that's a risky play for Garm. Garm being on that Corvette means it's not something you want to expose to too much firepower. It's not expendable in the way that a single Corvette in a list like this normally is. It's on that Corvette because he wants Garm to stay alive, and because not because he wants to throw him into the midst of things. So it looks like a really tough choice here for Johnathan. He's thinking really hard about it. A lot depends on this decision, and on the top table they're not taking any chances. You can see him just...
He's ruling out contested outpost, it looks like.
I think that was actually fire lanes.
Oh, I was looking at the wrong one. Fire lanes, yes.
And yeah, that's an easy one to rule out. He's going to lose on that one pretty handily. He doesn't have the kind of battery armament that you need to claim those victory points. So I think that's an easy thing to dismiss. This is a harder choice. This is a much harder choice because advanced gunnery,
allowing the Victory Star Destroyer to fire, probably the Victory Star Destroyer to fire twice from its front arc at the same ship.
Absolutely.
A huge amount of firepower.
Or he could give that flexibility to the Demolisher.
That's true.
But I suspect it would end up on the Victory. It's interesting, though. I wonder if Johnathan gets some advantage out of advanced gunnery as well, because those big broadsides being able to target different ships
It's like a free gunnery team for him.
It is, yeah, and on those against a 4-ship list, he's going to have plenty of times where he's going to be able to dual strike with that big broadside. So I can see the difficult decision in front of him here, because it's a risk if he does that advanced gunnery objective. But he also doesn't want to necessarily be scrambling around for objective tokens in the obstacle field. I think if I was in Johnathan's shoes, I might go for advanced gunnery and just hope that to stay outside of that victory's lethal front arc. He managed it last game.
Yeah, he was able to sweep around the victory last game, get in right behind it, and neutralize its biggest threat.
Putting a lot of thought into this decision.
And he's chosen Intel Sweep.
Looks like Intel Sweep, yep. Well, he's not poorly positioned for Intel Sweep either. That Corvette is helpful. And it's possible that he might just decide that 75 points is, it's a finite risk. There's a maximum number of points that he can lose if he doesn't win this face-off. And if the Gladiators are chasing after tokens, they're not chasing after his ships. That was a tough decision. You could tell that Johnathan put a ton of thought into it. Little snafu with the camera gear there. And the players are now moving into the setup phase.
And getting all the tokens necessary ready. And then they'll start deploying the obstacles.
Putting that station down. The obstacle placement is going to be very important here in Intel Sweep. Francisco's going to want to put the obstacles, well, both players are going to want to put the obstacles in such a way that they can sweep through them and gather as many tokens as possible. There's going to be a really pitched struggle to claim more objective tokens here. And I am very interested to see how these obstacles end up getting set up.
Obstacle line.
Really interesting.
Right across the middle.
Very interesting setup there. It's going to be quite an interesting game.
And then 2 debris fields sort of blocking the station from one side. From the rebel side, I believe.
Yeah. So I got a question from the forums. What do you think the strategy is behind bringing 8 A-Wings to the table? Well, I think it's a really interesting strategy. What it lets you do is, in a 300-point match, you're not really going to expect to see a heavier anti-squadron force than 8 A-Wings. 8 A-Wings should be able to win the fight against virtually any other squadron-based list, a list that brings bombers or the like. And in the absence of enemy squadrons, those A-Wings are fast and they're flexible and they can put out a huge amount of damage. Last game we saw those A-Wings virtually single-handedly knock out 2 gladiators. And what Johnathan is able to do is he's able to use those assault frigates in combination with Garmbel Iblis as carrier ships. And what I mean by a carrier ship is he is able to issue those squadron commands, which allows them to both move and shoot. That in combination with the A-Wing's black die, anti-ship die, and speed of 5 means that he can, in a single turn, move and attack with every single one of those A-Wings. And that's 8 black dice. More damage than any and it's going to put out, with the exception of maybe a full arc demolisher shot. And it's a much better range than even the demolisher does for all of that damage. And it's also a really interesting strategy because, especially in this early Wave 1 meta, the gladiators and victories that are so favored by the Imperial forces, they really don't have a lot of anti-squadron firepower. There's almost no way for them to eliminate those A-Wings, so they kind of just have to take the damage. There's not much that they can do with it. What Francisco's going to need to do to counter that A-Wing is he's going to need to stop those assault frigates. He's going to need to get his forces into a coordinated strike. He can't. If you throw a big attack with your assault frigate and you don't have the accuracy that you need, that brace token can take, a six hit attack down to 3. But if you have 3 separate A-Wing attacks of a single die each, there's almost nothing you can do about it. And they're swarming all over your ship. They're punching through the weak points. They can fly to the hull zone that doesn't have shields. And with only a single redirect token on a gladiator, that becomes very, very difficult for the gladiator to deal with. Many of the gladiators that we saw last game go down, I think both of them went down with shields still in play. And that is a really key way to extend your advantage. If you punch through to the hull zones without having to chew through all of the shields first, you can bring them down faster. So I think that Johnathan setting up his Corvette here to challenge some of these objective tokens. He's not going to let Francisco have a free run at them.
The token denoting that's his admiral and also the objective ship on the ship base there. So that's going to be tricky for him. He needs to fly out and get those objectives, but he also needs to keep that Corvette safe.
I think that Garm on the Corvette is actually a real disadvantage in this matchup. I think that I can see the strategy of putting him on that light maneuverable ship that he can keep safe. But unfortunately for Johnathan, in this situation, he needs that Corvette speed to go after those objective tokens. If he can't leverage that speed, he's going to be at a 75-point deficit in this game, and that is a huge swing in Francisco's direction. So he's going to have to make some bold and dangerous moves. He needs to pick up at least one of those tokens. I think if the Corvette can grab the closest token and then tilt towards the other side of the board, I see a pretty good opportunity actually here for Johnathan. If he can sweep up that first token and then crank hard to the left, go after those other 2 tokens. He doesn't want that Corvette in the fight anyway. It's the perfect ship to fly around the edges and try to get that 75-point advantage. And actually, based on the setup here, despite Francisco having access to his own objective, I actually think Johnathan might be in a better position to claim the points off the mission than Francisco is. I think it's a very smart play by Johnathan here.
At this early point, it does look like it, and the Corvette is the ship that has the maneuverability and the speed to zip around the map, pick up those objective tokens, and then get away.
Absolutely.
And again, another advantage of squadrons in the deployment phase. Johnathan's deploying the squadrons. He gets to use that to wait and see where all those gladiators and victories are going to be before he puts down his assault frigates.
Totally brilliant way to extend your advantage in the setup phase. Absolutely. He's going to be able to see every single Imperial ship go down before he has to commit a single one of those assault frigates. I think that Johnathan has played against this before. I think it's a popular meta list, and I think he knows how to beat it with this swarm. I think everything about Jonathan's list is calibrated to beat this dominant Gen Con Wave 1 Gladiator house of a list. He's at 96 points. That's 2 points less than the traditional Gen Con special build. He's got a huge number of squadrons, which are very difficult for the Imperials to answer. He's got the setup phase advantage, being able to outflank and outdeploy the Imperials. I think Johnathan came into this tournament with a very, very clever plan, and it's obviously paid off for him so far. See if he can seal the deal here in this final match. And that has seen huge advantage for Johnathan here. I think Jonathan's got all the edges here in deployment and in the initial advantage. I think he's got actually a better chance at claiming the objective. He's got all the information on these Imperials that he needs to know exactly where he wants to put those assault frigates. And then he's got a cloud of A-Wings ready to harass whatever comes through to try to pick up these objectives. Now, what Francisco's going to have to do, and remember, Francisco's at the top of the heap here. He's got 4 more points than Johnathan. All he needs to do is take out some of Jonathan's ships, get a small victory here, and I think he's going to be able to hang on to his lead and win the whole tournament. But Johnathan is not going to make that easy.
So Johnathan needs at least an 8-2 win in order to take the whole tournament. How much? Do we know the margin of victory on that? Exactly how many points does he need for an 8-2?
That's an excellent question. It's a pretty high number. I'm going to find out that information for you shortly, but it's going to have to be a fairly decisive win for Johnathan. He's not going to be able to play it safe like he did last game and hang back.
They're all speed 3.
I think he can pull it off with a 7-3 potentially.
Well, then that would tie them.
That would tie him up though
in total points.
And I think that Francisco's margin is bigger. So yeah, Johnathan needs a really big win here to take the title. Very interesting deployment from this assault frigate. I kind of expected it to trend closer to the other side of the board. But this is a very interesting broadside setup for this assault frigate.
Speed 3. I'm going to go ahead and start the clock.
Just a lethal horde of gladiators on the other side of the board here.
Also speed 3.
I think the rebels on the back foot from a combat perspective, at least until those A-Wings can start taking gladiators off the board. But the rebels nicely positioned to, I think, claim the most objective tokens in this match. And remember, only the designated objective ship can claim those tokens, so only Johnathan CR-90 and only Francisco's Gladiator can pick those tokens up.
So for the first turn, first turn is starting. You see the Garmbel Iblis tokens going out. And I think we're going to see the Corvette immediately dash up to grab that objective token.
I think so. I think it's gonna get within range one of that token, snatch it up, and then tilt hard to the left, getting away from that devastating wall of Imperial firepower and picking up the last 2 tokens.
And then without engine techs, I'm wondering if, even if at speed 3, if the Demolisher will be able to get up close enough to that Corvette once it's already out there. to do some real damage.
Without the initiative, I don't know. I don't think it's going to be that. I don't think it's going to be an easy feat. So I think Johnathan may have already sewn up that 75 points, but we're going to see if Francisco can counter that in any way.
And there's what's at stake. The Star Wars Armada World Championship Trophy.
The glory. The power and the glory. It's always great to have a Rebel versus Imperial final game. Very thematic and fun.
Mm-hmm.
I fully expect a really interesting game here today.
I think it's interesting in terms of the larger Star Wars Armada meta as well.
Oh, absolutely. We have the meta-defining...
The famed Gen Con special list versus a very heavy squadron list.
Absolutely. And, you know, squadrons have been the source of perhaps the most controversy in tactical discussions about this game. If you have read our forums or listened to some of the chatter out there, the merits or demerits, if you will, of squadrons has been hotly debated. But it seems pretty clear that there are multiple paths to victory in this game. Here on the top table, we have a heavy squadron list versus a list with no squadrons at all, so it's very clear that both strategies can be effective if they're played correctly. We've got the Corvette.
Oh, you guys already...
Corvette sliding up to grab that token, flinging its flagship token off in the process. I mean, the speed on those ships is incredible. It can be very difficult for the engineers to keep the tokens.
That was an e-brake turn.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's going to be an interesting game. Obviously, the Imperials outshoot the Rebels by a substantial margin, but they're going to have to fly through a cloud of fighters in order to get to the meat of Jonathan's list. And we've seen that go very badly for gladiators in the past. The players taking their time with these opening moves, wanting to make sure that everything goes perfectly. Now, the interesting thing about this game, and I think one of the cool things about Armada, is that the focus of the battle, even when you have a bunch of squadrons in play, is always on the ships. Those ships cannot just fly away and let the A-Wings do their work. They need to leverage squadron commands and stay in tactical range in order to get those A-Wings working in the way that they need to in order to combat those gladiators. And I think that's one of the game's real strengths, that even when you're playing the squadron game, even when you've brought a bunch of squadrons to the fight, they still need to be commanded by your capital ships. Your capital ships still have a huge role to play, and you can't afford to just leave the fighters behind to deal with the enemy while you run away. You have to kind of skirt that balance. You want to hang on the edges of the fight, get your firepower off, take as little damage as you can in return, and still be in command range to command that just swarm of A-Wings that he's got lined up here. That's so many black dice that he can leverage. And it looks like Jonathan's going to have to secure at least a 91-point victory over Francisco if he's going to get 8 points out of this match.
So just getting the objectives, just getting the victory tokens is not going to be enough.
Not quite, but if he can destroy, say, one gladiator, grab the objective tokens, and lose only, a few A-Wings or nothing at all, he'll be in good shape. If it turns into a bloodbath, I think that's when Francisco's going to have the edge. Francisco doesn't need to win big. He just has to hold Johnathan to a smaller victory. But both of these players want a big win because a big win will put them ahead of third, fourth, fifth, sixth place. You know, if Royal Tippets with 30 points pulls off a 10-0 win, not a likely thing to occur, but that'll put him at 40 points as well. So you can't get complacent even up here at the final table, because this is the last game. And we've got that Gladiator just absolutely cruising out. I believe he is going to try to set up an attack trajectory. He may try to catch that last assault frigate in the pass here. He's going to need to set up a vector that gets his ships into bear, because obviously Johnathan wants no part of the ship-to-ship fight. Johnathan wants to throw a few dice from long range and get out of there while the A-Wings go to town. I think all Johnathan really needs to do is get that mission accomplished, knock out a Gladiator, and save his points. He just needs to edge out Francisco by 90 to 100 or so points. $91 to 150 is the bracket for 8 and 2. 151 to 220 is the bracket for 9 and 1. And really anything above 91 is going to see Johnathan in really good shape to win this whole tournament. I think we're going to see a greater threat to Jonathan's list than we saw last round, though. Francisco's got more ships, more firepower. He's in a better place positionally, but unlike last game, Johnathan has the objective advantage this time.
It seems like a more cautious opening moves this game than the last one.
Yes, yeah, they are being very careful to make sure that their later turns are successful. Francisco cranking in at maximum speed. He knows he can't afford to slow roll here. Hopefully he's got a lot of nav commands plotted on that victory so he can angle into the fight, because otherwise I think it's in danger of getting outpaced. Francisco may even have to charge through these obstacles in order to interdict these rebel fighters.
We saw what happened last game when the victory doesn't have navigation commands lined up. It just can't turn fast enough to keep up with those assault frigates.
Absolutely. If you need a victory to get somewhere that it isn't, you need to have a very thick stack of navigation commands plotted. And really in the opening moves of this game, he has to expect that victory is not going to get into the fight for quite some time. So going speed 2 here, getting as much distance as he can, I think that's the wise course of action. It looks like he's actually plotted, taken the token, the navigation token, instead of using it to get extra yaw or what have you. He's going to save that token for a later turn, perhaps when he needs to slow down to speed 1 and get stuck into that scrum.
And the last Gladiator also picking up a navigation token as it moves up in formation. The Imperialists staying together pretty closely. Anything that gets in front of that is going to have a bad day.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And Johnathan knows that. He knows he can't go toe-to-toe with those ships. This is a very thematic matchup, actually. The Imperials, with their indomitable lumbering wall of firepower, really can't be directly confronted. And the Rebels, of course, playing those devious hit-and-run tactics that the Alliance is so notorious for. It's going to have to utilize every sneaky trick in the book in order to overcome that insane amount of firepower that's on its way towards this formation. And just looks intimidating. Those ships lined up in attack formation.
It does. The triangles of doom coming for you. We're going to see if the one-man fighters will be any good against this wall of Imperial firepower. They worked pretty well last game against the Gladiators.
They have every advantage against the Gladiator 1. The Gladiator 1 does not throw much in the way of anti-squadron dice. There are no TIE fighters on the table whatsoever, so no real way to contest the domination of those A-wings. They're flying unopposed. And if they can coordinate their efforts on a single Gladiator, which they will easily be able to do with 2 squadron commands next turn, they're going to start putting some serious hurt down.
And we kind of have a wall of A-wings built up to counter the wall of Star Destroyers.
Absolutely. Johnathan has a specific tactic in mind. He's going to use those A-wings as the firepower of his list. The assault frigates are there purely as a support. Throw a few dice, but get those squadrons where they need to be.
Looks like dials are getting set for turn number 2.
Yep, that was round 1. A long round because a lot of thought went into that objective choice and initial placement, but things should pick up a little bit here as the plans are fairly well set in stone at this point.
And we start to get our first shooting probably this turn.
Yeah, I think we'll see some shooting. The Demolisher may lunge forward to get some shots, although it may decide that it needs to favor late positional play over immediate aggression. We saw what happened to the last Gladiator that stuck its nose out too far at Jonathan's list. It did not last long. And remember, too, without initiative, Francisco is going to have a tough time keeping up with this list of Jonathan's. Very flexible list, very fast list. Has a hard counter to Francisco with those 8 A-wings. Well placed to claim the 75-point objective.
Yeah, it looks like, based on the board position right now, it looks like the Imperial player has to write off the objective.
Yeah, there's no way that I think he can successfully claim it this turn. The only way that he would be able to get the objective at this point is to kill that
Destroy the
CR-90.
Corvette.
Yep, because if he can kill the CR-90 before it gets to the other side of the board and claim those 2 tokens for himself, he's going to win. But I don't see that happening.
Yeah, the Corvette is activating first. He's already taken that first objective token. He's looking to get a minor pot shot from his rear arc on one of the Gladiators, and then he's going to be gone.
And you know what allowed Johnathan to win this objective war was really the way he used his A-wings to out-deploy the Imperials. He was able to set up his ships in such a way that he got to see all of Francisco's drops before he had to commit either of those assault frigates to the fight. And that's a very powerful benefit to having that many squadrons in play.
And there goes the Corvette, safely out of reach of Imperial firepower for one more turn.
A stately game of naval combat, Nathan, playing out before us. And as we watch these initial jousts, if anybody has any questions on the chat stream, we've got a long and interesting game ahead of us, but there's always some breathing room in between these rounds as players plot dials and plan their grand strategy. So if you have any burning questions, send them our way. And of course, if you are tuning in for the first time and you have questions about the game or you're interested in becoming a part of the tournament scene, check out your local gaming stores. Local gaming stores are empowered by Fantasy Flight Games' organized play department with tournament kits. There are store championships. Those lead into regional championships, which lead into national championships. And it all culminates right here at the World Finals. But it's a great way to start small if you're interested in the game, or if you have bought into the game and you're looking for a place to play it more competitively.
And there's some neat prizes you can win. There's alternate art cards. There's acrylic tokens.
Participation prizes as well.
Prizes.
It's a growing community.
And it's a great way to meet fellow gamers.
And it's a brand new game, too. It's its first year. Wave 2 will be out very soon. But it's a great time to get in because there are excellent entry points, and you don't need you're not overwhelmed by choices at this stage in the game. There's 2 ships available for the Imperials right now and 3 for the Rebels, along with squadrons. So the game is still in its infancy. It's got a lot of growing to do, and it's a good time to jump in and check out the action at your local gaming stores.
Up damage card.
Yep, he had to jump onto that rock in order to get a decent attack trajectory here. I think it was the right play for the victory, but that was some good optical placement by Johnathan, seeding those obstacles in between his fleet and Francisco's. He knew that he was going to be able to force a few collisions, and that always helps. And we are going to start the A-Wing Swarm. It'll be interesting to see what ship Johnathan targets here.
I believe that crit on the victory was shield failure. Your opponent may choose up to 2 of your hull zones. Each of the chosen hull zones loses a shield. We saw them reducing the shields afterwards.
And that is a rough crit because that may have been all that Johnathan needed to determine his target priority here, because it looks like he's going to go for this victory.
It softened the shields up.
And there's another hit from that A-Wing.
Made it a tempting target.
Absolutely. And I think that's the right play. I mean, this victory is slow. It's not going to be able to outrun these A-Wings by a long stretch of the imagination. And if he can take Admiral Screed out, boy, he's going to really reduce the effectiveness of those Gladiators, especially with all of those assault concussion missiles. So Johnathan just going for the jugular here. Second A-Wing misses. Third A-Wing coming in for the kill. Well, far from the kill, but trying to drop a little more damage on this victory. It's a long way from dead.
For the next cut, and there it goes with 1 more damage.
And that's what I mean about those black dice. It's a 75% chance on every one of those dice of doing a hit. Very consistent, very just little nibbling away at the shields, nibbling away at the Victory Class Star Destroyer. And he's going to be able to follow it up with a broadside from the assault frigate. So Johnathan, I think, claiming the early advantage here, swarming all over this victory.
1 more hit.
Admiral Screed probably wondering why he didn't bring a few more TIE fighters to this matchup. Although the interesting thing about this meta is this Gen Con special list is so powerful against so many different builds. Its only real Achilles heel truly is squadrons. And squadrons is exactly what Johnathan brought to bear.
And here goes the assault frigate's broadside.
We got a commentary here. A-Wing MVP for Armada 2. Of course, we saw Nathan Ides A-Wing making some excellent plays yesterday, and I'm just going to call it A-Wing MVP all day, all week.
Not the strongest hit from the assault frigate, just 2 damage.
But every little bit.
But the second frigate still has to go with all those A-Wings, and
Yep.
I think the shields are going to be down on the front of the victory by now.
Absolutely. I think that Jonathan's going to be able to destroy this victory. It might not be this turn, it might not be next turn, but there's nowhere for it to go, and there's no way for it to eliminate these A-Wings whatsoever, or even dampen them or slow them down.
But soon, and for the rest of the game.
It's a tough thing, though, because even if Francisco had brought a few TIE fighters, those A-Wings would have chewed through them in very short order. Johnathan has committed very hard to this squadron strategy. Very hard indeed.
And with counter, the A-Wings...
They're deadly.
Yeah.
They're deadly. Every time you try to take an A-Wing down, it shoots back at you, with a squadron at least. So even if Francisco had foregone a Gladiator to take TIE fighters, he would have been facing an uphill battle against those A-Wings either way. And of course, TIE fighters are worth victory points as well. It's a difficult balance game to choose. Both of these strategies are kind of all-in strategies. And it's going to play out in a very interesting fashion here.
Assault frigate's not going to be able to clear the Victory's front arc this turn.
And that debris field has really punished, or rather that asteroid field has really punished that Victory. That's 2 more damage he wasn't expecting to take, combined with 3 hits from the A-Wings and a couple damage from the assault frigate. That adds up faster than you'd realize. I mean, the Victory class, a tanky ship, you know, probably the toughest ship in Wave 1, but nothing is invincible, especially against that much squadron firepower coming its way. A few more rounds of that, and the flagship will have be in danger of going down. I've got a question here from the chat. Has Johnathan committed to an anti-meta strategy? Do most players currently eschew the use of fighter squadrons? I think Johnathan has absolutely committed to an anti-meta strategy. I think he has seen this list before. I think he's demonstrating in this game that he knows how to play against it. I think he demonstrated that last game as well. Conventional wisdom for a long time has been you don't need squadrons to win. You can just take this devastating gladiator list and crush all comers. And, you know, that has worked for Francisco, but I think Francisco may be facing his Achilles heel. This list has only one glaring weakness, and that is squadrons. And that is exactly what it has to contend with today.
And as to whether it's more common overall, I think that really varies from what I've been seeing on the internet. It really varies from region to region. Certainly here in Roseville at the Game Center, we play Armada on Tuesday nights, and there are plenty of squadron lists. And I would actually say very few people play with no squadrons. So around here, it's not such a common thing to see no squadrons.
Well, and it's interesting, too, because there is, of course, a significant difference between casual play and hardcore tournament play. Tournament players who are trying to rise to the top, they're looking for consistency, they're looking for a way to get sizable advantages, and they're looking for a way to just maximize, the term you hear a lot is min-max. You know, you pick one strategy and you tilt hard in, you lean into that strategy, and you rely on it to carry you. But I think that what we may find in the future is players moving towards more balanced lists that try to cover up any weaknesses that they have. Because the risk that you run into with a one-dimensional strategy is you risk running into its exact hard counter. And when you're in that situation and you didn't bring any answers, there's not a lot that you can do to soften that blow. And that's exactly what we're seeing here tonight. Another hit from an A-Wing.
A-Wing's just tacking on the damage one at a time, and that's exactly what Johnathan wants him to do.
Just got to be Francisco feeling the pressure here as this wave of A-Wings ever so slowly chips away at this Victory class. Another hit. Jonathan's black dice, very consistent. Now the odds favor that, but I think he's rolled 2 misses in 2 games so far with these A-Wings, and that helps a lot. Whenever you have a strategy that relies on plinking away little bits of damage, you really do need those dice to come up your way. And there's another one. This Victory is already hurting here in round 2.
And Francisco just has to be gritting his teeth now, as there's not much he can do against just so many 1 damage attacks.
No,
looks like he has used one of his redirect tokens, starting to, but that's a redirect token that can't be used for something else.
Now I almost wonder at this point.
And there's one more hit from
another
the
hit. Ouch, that's just brutal. I wonder at this point if these gladiators try to saturate the field with some anti-squadron firepower. They're not really in range to do anything else. You know, if he can get lucky and get a lot of hits with that single blue die anti-fighter barrage, he might be able to thin the herd a little bit. But
the Victory's going to be obstructing a lot of those shots.
The Victory's going to be obstructing a lot of those shots. Absolutely good placement for Johnathan. And he did not bring any Gladiator 2s. The Gladiator 2, of course, has the 2 blue anti-squadron dice. He elected to go all in on the missile strategy, maximum anti-ship firepower, but that means he's going to be vulnerable to a list like this. even if those gladiators, even if a couple of those gladiators were gladiator 2s, he would have a chance to bring down some of those A-wings and take some of the heat off. Not a great chance, mind you, but you know, at least he'd be able to have some sort of counterplay to this. But with just one anti-squadron battery on every single one of his ships, 4 hull it's going to take many turns to chew through, and at that point the ships will be in such bad shape that it may not even make a difference.
The blue die is what, a 50% chance of damaging a squadron?
Blue die is 50-50. So not great.
And A-wings aren't the beefiest squadron, but
they're not the beefiest, but they're not TIE fighters.
They
have 4.
They're tougher than TIE fighters.
Having 4 instead of 3 makes a world of difference.
And there's also a lot of them.
There are a lot of them. Yep. And Johnathan's smart enough to keep those A-wings repositioning. He's not going to open them up to multiple shots from multiple ships. He's going to be careful with them. He doesn't need to worry, because he can use their maneuverability and those squadron commands to keep them very fast and very flexible. Another hit.
Oh.
That's that last
That's
A-wings
the last one. I think the
remaining
Demolisher
die.
is going now.
Well, Francisco needs to make something happen here, or he's going to drown in A-wings.
Looks like he might not be in range for the front shot.
So does he spit out some anti-squadron dice, knowing they'll likely be ineffectual? I mean, I think he takes the shot if it's his only shot, but it's not going to have a major impact. I think only 2 of those squadrons will be vulnerable.
He's taking a concentrate fire token, I believe. And yeah, I saw him pick up the blue die, so he's firing anti-squadron at the A-wings and trying to chip away at them.
There's a hit. It's a start. And another hit. That's a start. Again, every little bit counts. And another one. It's going about as well as it possibly could for Francisco on this anti-squadron barrage. Looks like 4 ships were vulnerable, and that one is a miss. But you know, the thing about it is that is just not going to be sufficient. It's going to take way too long to gun those A-wings down, and I think that they will have done their work and moved on by the time they're threatened.
And then the other thing is getting enough hits on one squadron to take it out. If you have a bunch of hits spread out over the whole bunch, it doesn't really matter.
Absolutely. And he can move those A-wings. He can take the injured ones and reposition them somewhere else. He can fly away with them if they get down to 1 hull. Without squadrons of his own, he has no ability to control this squadron engagement. And when he overlaps these ships, Johnathan is going to be able to reposition the squadrons in the way that he wants to. But here comes the Demolisher, and as we know, the Demolisher can absolutely be a game changer. I believe that's the Demolisher. I could be wrong.
I think it is.
Now here's an interesting thing. Francisco knows that those A-wings are going to have their hands full with that victory, so he can play a lot more aggressively with the Gladiator, because if the A-wings shift targets now and go for that Gladiator, they're splitting their fire, and that's a mistake. So he can move the Gladiator through those A-wings relatively safe in the knowledge that it's not likely to be targeted by the A-wing swarm, at least not yet. And that is the silver lining for this victory getting swarmed. That's the choice that Johnathan had to make. Does he go for the Gladiator or does he go for the Vic? He saw an opportunity to take the victory out quickly because of the crit that it drew, because of the damage that it is going to suffer from 8 full A-wing squadrons, because of the way that assault frigate is positioned to add its own dice to the fight as well. But what that is going to let this Gladiator conga line do is give it a breather from those A-wings, and it's going to make that those assault frigates have a tough choice to make in the coming rounds here. They're going to have to either just crank it up to 3 and go to escape velocity and, bring themselves out of the squadron war entirely, leave command range, or do they stay and try to duke it out against all of those Gladiators?
And the second Gladiator taking some anti-squadron shot.
Yep, and, Francisco, if you can drop some A-wings, that's victory points. That takes the pressure off. He's using every tool in his toolbox. He didn't bring a lot of anti-squadron tools, but he has some. No ship in the game is completely defenseless. And another one. He's getting pretty good rolls here. Yeah, that's going to help. Going to help soften him up. And another one, rolling very, very well. Remember, only a 50% chance on these blue dice of a hit, and almost every single one of them is turned up hit. That is going to help. There's a crit that will miss when you're rolling anti-squadron.
So I think there's a couple A-wing squadrons now down to 2 health.
It looks like we're going to go into the next round here, round 3. We're moving into the third round of 6. Johnathan's on track to secure the objective and an extra 75 points. Looks like he's on track to take that victory down as well eventually, although some good flak rolls from Francisco, some good anti-fighter barrages have put some hurt on that A-wing swarm. When they're all clustered together like that, the one advantage that those Gladiators do have is they're going to be able to spray dice out of their sides and roll a die against, it looks like, virtually every A-wing squadron in the game. Now, if Johnathan has plotted a squadron command, he can use that. He can activate his assault frigate, use that squadron command to get some hits in with the A-wings, and then move them out of danger from those Gladiators. I think that he may do that. He has activated.
Johnathan's first activation is the close assault frigate, and it looks like he's.
But I don't think he did reveal squadron. I think he revealed concentrate fire, or perhaps he did squadron. It's hard to tell.
I think he's measuring to see which squadrons are in range.
That would make sense. I would have predicted another squadron command from Johnathan at this point. And yes, that's exactly what he's doing. He's going to take some shots with these A-wings. He's gonna plink some more damage onto the Star Destroyer, and he is going to move them out of the danger zone. Exactly the right play in this situation. So flexible. These A-wings are so flexible when they're supported by a carrier ship.
And there's another damage being applied to the Victory.
Yep. You have to imagine Admiral Screed on the bridge of that Victory just watching in horror as, dozens and dozens of A-wings swoop over his Star Destroyer, launching salvo after salvo of proton rockets and concussion missiles. His shields are failing. He's holding a notice of from Imperial High Command. I'm sorry we were unable to fulfill your TIE Fighter requisition request at this time.
TIEIOU. And just the 3 squadrons being activated since he already used the squadron token. And now taking the broadside shot. Seeing if it's in medium range, if he gets the blue die. It looks like it was just out of range. We'll see when he rolls the dice. Oh, it was in medium range.
That's a big hit.
And then he's got the accuracy.
Yep, that's going to be 3 more damage onto that victory. This victory is not long for this world. That victory, I'm not exactly sure how much health is left, but it's hurting at this point.
It's taking the second face-up damage card.
We're going to try to get an angle on that victory ship card so we can see how much damage it has left. And it is down. And that is the brutality of Johnathan's list here. That is how incredibly scary it is to be faced with that much. You know, fully a third of his list really is invested in these squadrons, or almost 88 points of A-Wings. Almost a third of his list. And they have been used to just devastating effect all tournament long. I don't think I've seen a victory class go down that fast in quite some time. I mean, the crit didn't help, but Johnathan was able to draw it through the field like that. But really, once again, these A-Wings, the star of the show, with a little bit of assault frigate support from the broadside there, but the A-Wings doing the majority of the work here, and Francisco really behind the 8-ball at this point. I think that Johnathan's going to be able to turn those A-Wings around and start going after gladiators.
And now Francisco has a whole lot of points invested in assault concussion missiles that are no longer a guarantee without Admiral Screed.
Oh, absolutely. No, the loss of Screed is huge. The loss of Screed cannot be emphasized enough because every single one of those gladiators is now just going to have to rely on lucky rolls in order to get crits, whereas Screed can guarantee that those missiles go off round after round. I think Francisco may not have expected quite such lethal damage out of those A-Wings because he was very aggressive with that Victory class Star Destroyer, and normally you can be. I suspect that in all of his previous matches, Francisco was able to tank pretty well with the Victory and then bring its devastating battery to bear, but he underestimated the damage that those A-Wings were going to do.
Now the second assault frigate is out of range to issue coordination orders to move more A-Wings, but the A-Wings are in good position to just sit right where they are and shoot at the gladiators.
Absolutely. And without engine techs, those gladiators, without no engine techs and no initiative, means those gladiators are not going to be fast enough to catch this slippery rebel fleet.
There's the 2 red dice from the front of the lead gladiator.
Yep.
Concentrate
doing
fire
what it
dial.
can. Doing what it can.
Brings up a blank and the token.
For a reroll.
Reroll the blank for another blank.
Not good dice for Francisco here. He needs a lot to happen.
And that's going to be at long range. All those ships that he could be shooting at. Yep, the evade token cancels out one of the crits, and just a single damage goes through.
It's been brought to my attention that I forgot to say A-Wing MVP when that victory went down. I'm going to rectify that error here and now. A-Wing MVP.
And the Gladiator firing more anti-squadron at the A-Wings.
He's looking for revenge. and they're not quite as nice looking as they were in previous rounds. But again, I mean, a lot of this is list setup. He didn't bring anything that could reliably or consistently deal with this threat. It's really amazing how a list can go from utterly dominant to without really a lot of answers, just depending on matchup. I really think Johnathan took stock of the meta, came up with a very clever list, and is playing it absolutely expertly here today. Very, very smart list construction and play from Johnathan.
And there are a few A-Wings, I think, that are down to 2 health, but it's still probably going to be another several rounds of shooting at them before even one of the A-Wings drops. And there's still several that are at full health.
And unfortunately for Francisco, these gladiators coming in one by one and just getting, I suspect anyway, that they're just going to get chewed apart by these A-Wings.
The second assault frigate measuring out his shots. He may have a rear shot on that gladiator from his broadside.
He might. You know, the thing that Johnathan has going for him right now is he's got 99 points of Victory Star Destroyer, and he should be able to get another 75 points of objectives. If he doesn't lose any of his own ships, that puts him at 174 points, which is a 9-1 victory. And that is going to easily put him at the top of the heap here. I think it's Jonathan's game to lose at this point.
Not the best roll from his broadside. He was hoping for a little bit more than that. I think that'll be canceled by the gladiators evade.
Agreed. And we're winding down the third round here.
There's going to be a lot of anti-squadron shots, I think.
I think we're going to see. Yep, we're going to see an anti-fighter barrage. Francisco may be able to take out some of these A-Wings eventually if he just keeps pouring the firepower onto them. Another hit.
And that's really the only thing that these gladiators can do.
Yeah, they don't have any other options. They don't have the long-range dice. Another hit.
So it looks like there's one A-Wing squadron down to 1.
I do think I think we will see some kills on these A-Wings, but I think it'll be too little, too late. And the gladiators continuing to barrel forward, but they can't overcome the speed of those assault frigates and that corvette. Both ships are speed 3.
They're all going speed 3, and due to the nature of shooting first and then moving in Armada, the Demolisher is really the only one that has any chance of getting in some close-range shots.
And that is, I don't think that's going to be enough. The assault frigates are fairly tanky, fairly substantial. There's a huge cloud of A-Wings ready to refocus on one of those gladiators if needs be. Broadsides and rear shots from the assault frigates. Fire from the corvette, even, from Garm.
Mm-hmm. And it'll be a lot of little hits. But we've seen the effectiveness of that several times now from Jonathan's list.
We got a question from FFG Live for you, Nathan. What do you do at Fantasy Flight Games? What's your job?
I'm an application developer, so I'm a software engineer, and I work on the digital companion apps and other digital games that Fantasy Flight is working on.
And this is your first year at FFG, correct?
It is. I just started June 1st.
So welcome aboard, Nathan. It's great
Thank
to
you
have
very
you
much.
on board.
I'm a big Star Wars fan, and it has been a privilege to get to watch these games and commentate on them.
Absolutely. It's good having you here behind the microphones with me. And we've got, of course, the Corvette going first. Obviously, it's going to want to escape the clutches of this Gladiator. That is going to maybe open up that assault frigate to a shot from the Gladiator if he's got a close range shot out the side there. But like I said, the assault frigate can probably take it. It's headed straight for that space station to repair.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent deployment from Johnathan. I think that's what won him this game. In fact, I know that's what won him this game. He was able to outposition those Gladiators. He was able to draw the victory onto that asteroid field. That gets it one step closer to death. And then he was perfectly positioned to command those A-Wings to go in for the kill strike. And to scoop up the objectives as well. He just hasn't made any mistakes here today.
So the assault frigate that's farther out, I believe, has already taken a little bit of damage, but he's right in position to go to the space station and repair.
Yep, absolutely. Another question for you, Nathan. Do you think companion apps add a lot to board games by allowing hidden information to be concealed from all players?
I think that the companion app space is just at the beginning of what we're able to do.
It's really exciting new territory to be developing.
Yeah, and there's some really cool stuff in the works. We're working on stuff. We're working on pushing the boundaries for what's out there, and I'm really excited to be involved in it. I hope you guys are excited to see what comes out, and I think that
yeah, it's going to be a really interesting couple of years as we try to integrate that further.
I think that there's some more anti-squadron fire going out.
Yep, looks like another barrage from the side of the Gladiator. Not really rolling any hits, though. Johnathan is about to claim the 75 points. I think he's got. He's going to get his second victory token here, giving him the lead.
Yeah, there's one more victory token on the right side for the Gladiator to claim, but the last victory token all the way over on the left, really out of reach of the Imperial player.
Actually, it looks like the Imperial player has maybe put himself out of distance one of that token. Nope, he's still in. But it's not going to matter. The Corvette's going to be able to scoop up the last one. It's going to take another round, but eventually those 75 points are going to be in the bag for Johnathan. So we're seeing kind of the... Oh, go ahead.
Oh, Johnathan is pulling out the damaged A-Wings, using their speed to just get out of there, and he's saving those points and keeping them away from Francisco, as the undamaged or relatively undamaged A-Wings move in
and Johnathan,
to get more shots off.
Yep, Johnathan is taking no chances here. He's gonna make this victory as big as possible and do everything he can to tear apart Francisco's fleet.
So I think Johnathan has drawn the Imperial fleet exactly to where he wants them.
Absolutely.
In a pursuit formation. behind him. They can't bring their close dice to bear, their black dice, where they get almost all of their damage from. And he can keep on. He's going to take some shots. He's going to take some hits due to activation order. But he can keep his assault frigates rolling, I think, for the rest of the game and play a game of keep away. If he can secure his assault frigates, he's going to have the points once he gets this last objective token to get the big win and probably take first in the whole thing.
Absolutely. And we see those A-Wings turning their attention to that lead gladiator. If I were the captain of that ship, having watched the victory go down, I would be very nervous just about now. I might be pulling up my, escape plans, checking to see where the closest escape pod is.
Telling the navigation officer to have hyperspace coordinates ready, maybe?
Absolutely.
And that A-Wing, you saw him pull out to the debris field, effectively making him invulnerable to the anti-squadron fire of the gladiators since they roll only a single die.
Yep. Johnathan really playing every angle here, not giving any quarter. And nor should you at the final table of the World Finals.
Definitely. And the A-Wings plinking away, one more damage.
Yeah, and those A-Wings, they are a crack team. Clearly the best of the best. Some of the fiercest pilots in the Alliance because they have missed a shockingly low number of times throughout this tournament.
Yeah, I need to recruit some of these A-Wing pilots for when I play.
And there's yet another hit. And just strafing run after strafing run, A-Wing screaming through space.
And then moving forward to have a shot next turn.
Absolutely, keeping pace with the assault frigates.
So even if he doesn't have a squadron command next turn, they'll be able to shoot during the squadron phase.
And just you can see Garmin Bell Iblis out there in the Corvette, having laid this masterful trap for the Imperials, is just content to command from a distance and watch his crack fighter teams go to work on this Imperial fleet.
Mm-hmm. He's getting ready to hand out a big bunch of tokens at the start of the 5th round. And there's, again, the assault frigates have not been contributing a whole ton of damage. We've seen a lot of blanks from their broadsides.
But every little bit helps, and the fighters are doing the majority of the work here. And the Gladiator taking more punishment here. This is the 4th round. 2 rounds left to play. Maybe another Gladiator goes down.
Maybe. I certainly don't expect Johnathan to take the pressure off, but
no, not
he doesn't
chance.
even really need it at this point.
No, he doesn't, but he's not taking any chances. He knows that the higher his margin of victory, the less chance there is for someone who's sitting at maybe 30 points to creep up from behind. So he's got the opportunity to put the nail in Francisco's coffin here, and he's going to do everything he can to do it. He's gone is the caution of last game when he pulled his ships back. He knows that he can end these gladiators, and he's going to do everything in his power to make sure that happens. He's got control of the situation at this point. And next round, Garm, of course, will throw out another set of tokens, which is going to allow the full A-Wing swarm to once again converge on a Gladiator.
Do you think it will be...
Here's a Gladiator shooting the Assault Frigate, one of the only meaningful dice rolls that Francisco's been able to bring to bear this game. And it's a significant one. But unfortunately, with the lack of accuracy, he's going to be able to take that down to only 3 damage. And that's the difference between a ship attack and an A-Wing attack. 5 A-Wings are going to get 5 damage through, more or less, if that's what they roll. But, you know, if you see these 5 dice, the brace token can be used to X them out. And that's an important distinction.
And there's the shots, the damage being redirected distributed over the assault frigate's shields.
Yep. But that assault frigate has really not taken much damage. It's taken a little bit of firepower from that victory before it went down. It took a big hit from this gladiator, but the gladiator only has a single arc on target, and the assault frigate is going to be able to fly away at top speed here. Going to throw a few dice out at this other assault frigate, but Garm's going to drop a bunch of tokens next round, including engineering tokens.
Engineering tokens, and Johnathan could have engineering dials all set for the 5th round.
If I were Johnathan, I would probably drop, depending on what orders he has plotted, he could drop navigate, engineering, and squadron, and just play that defensive game. Garm offers you so much flexibility.
And if he does have the engineering dial lined up with the token, that gives him 6 points to be able to bring 3 shields back up on the assault frigate.
Yep.
Pretty safe, a pretty nice buffer there for that the gladiators have to work through again.
Oh, absolutely. No, this game was very much won in the deployment phase. And that can come down to it in Armada, particularly if you have a very one-dimensional list. If you have a hard counter to your opponent and you deploy well, there just ends up being just the nature of the game being such a deliberate, slow, tactical, long-term game. At a certain point, there's just not much you can do about it if you didn't have the right opening strategy, and it's sort of chess-like in that way, in that your initial placement and moves really determine the entire course of the game.
And now the gladiator right in the danger zone, in between both of the assault frigates.
So I have a question from the stream here. Has anyone talked about how lists will change when army point totals go up to 400? And yes, starting in Wave 2, when I say expensive, but I mean higher pointed ships become available, like the Imperial class Star Destroyer, the game will move from 300 points to 400 points, so it'll feel even bigger, even more epic. And I think what we're going to see with Wave 2 is we're going to see lists that strive for a bit more balance. I don't think we're going to see as many of these all-in lists, although actually I imagine a rebel fleet led by Admiral Akbar that eschews squadrons will be a pretty fierce competitor as well. But in general, I think we're going to see some more well-rounded forces. We're going to see people taking ships and squadrons in a mixture, try to cover all of their bases. At the very least, it's going to give you a lot more wiggle room. At 400 points, you can take this entire fleet that Francisco has, but you can also take,
a significant quantity of fighters to back it up.
60 to 70 points of squadrons, and then you can put engine techs and various other upgrades on your ships. So the cool thing about 400 points is you get a much more robust experience. You can take a bunch of ships to the battle, and you don't have to sacrifice that fighter screen. And you can put upgrades on. So you can really have a lot more flexibility in list building at 400 points. I'm so excited about Wave 2. I think it brings such a fun host of options to the game, and I can't wait to get behind the table with an Imperial class Star Destroyer in front of me. I think that's everybody's dream as soon as this game was announced.
It's such an iconic ship
to it.
And such a popular ship.
And my favorite hilarious combination to run these days, if I'm just feeling hyper aggressive, is Vader on an Imperial 2 Star Destroyer with electronic countermeasures and the Devastator title, and you just burn through tokens as fast as you can. The electronic countermeasures keeps you alive just long enough, and pretty soon you're throwing insane amount of dice out of the front of that thing. And with speed 3, it can catch these rebel ships in arc. With medium range, it can intercept assault frigates and make them pay for trying to escape the Empire's wrath.
It's not one of those bulk cruisers.
No.
it's a big Imperial vessel.
Well done. The big Corellian ships.
Corellian ships,
absolutely. Yep. I think Wave 2 for sure, you sort of reach the game's point of maturity. That is the point at which it really feels like a truly complete game. Wave 1, of course, a lot of options, a lot of fun. A huge number of strategies, even just in Wave 1. But Wave 2 practically doubles the content. It just brings a whole new dimension to the playstyle.
And think of just one card in Wave 2. How much could boosted comms have influenced this game? How much can
absolutely
you get a lot more leeway in the deployment of your ships.
Absolutely.
Your squadrons can be farther away, and with hyper maneuverable squadrons like the A-Wing, they can come from out of nowhere, and you can issue those squadron commands from quite a distance away. It gives you a lot more, even more flexibility to the already very flexible squadron list that we see here.
And it also brings a whole new style of play with rogue squadrons. Rogue squadrons pay a premium for that ability. So, for example, a fire spray costs twice as much as a TIE bomber and doesn't have quite the same damage potential or hit points when it comes to its raw stats. But it has the rogue keyword, which means that at the start of the squadron phase, it can move and fire, or when it's its turn to activate in the squadron phase. So you can have a strategy that employs a small number of rogue squadrons operating independently from your main fleet. And so that's yet another strategy that doesn't even exist yet, and I think that's going to open the door really wide for super interesting lists.
I think there's going to be so much more diversity. Like, we've already seen quite a bit of diversity. That there is a lot of people saying only no squadron fleets would be around, only certain types of fleets would be around. With Wave 2, I think it's going to break everything open, and we'll see.
Another Gladiator goes down. Those A-Wings just really uncontested monsters in this game. A-Wing MVP.
Yeah, right in between the two assault frigates. Not the best place for a Gladiator to be, especially when surrounded by a swarm of A-Wings.
Johnathan brought the right tools to the table in this final match, far and away.
And there goes the next objective token.
That'll be 75 more points on top of the 63 he just scored for that Gladiator. So he's got a commanding lead at this point. It's looking like a 10-0 victory for Johnathan. I got a question about the Raider title that engages squadrons. Does that stop fighters from attacking anything at all if it is in range of enemy squadrons, as it makes them count as being engaged? Yes, that will be getting an FAQ once Wave 2 is released, but certainly the intention behind that title is it allows you to fly into a fighter screen and force those fighters to attack your Raider instead of any other target that they might have. Well, your Raider or squadrons. It acts much the same way as squadrons do in that it forces engagement, prevents those squadrons from moving, and prevents them from shooting ships if they are engaged with the Raider.
So I think I had a question that came up, or that hasn't come up in any of my playtest games. The quad laser turret upgrade.
Yes.
If I have a blue and a black die, which one do I roll? If my ship is counting as having counter 1.
Oh, counter 1 is blue dice. It's explicit. It's explicitly blue dice. Question, does Janor's intel work on ships or just squadrons? Just squadrons. What intel does is all squadrons at range 1 of you are treated as heavy. And the heavy keyword, of course, means that they don't cause engagement, they don't prevent squadrons from moving away.
So Francisco now not in a good position.
Just to clarify what I was trying to talk about earlier with that Raider, the Raider is not immune to being shot at. So, for example, if a Raider were to fly into a cloud of squadrons, those squadrons would be able to attack the Raider with the title. They just wouldn't be able to attack a different ship. They could attack the Raider with the title. They could attack any squadrons that were in that fight, but they wouldn't be able to attack whatever their primary target was previous to the Raider showing up. It's a way to get a little bit of control out of it, but it is not a blanket immunity to squadron fire.
So the beginning of the 5th turn now, we see Garm giving out those tokens again, and We see that definitely the engineering token going out to the assault frigate mark number 2 on the space station. Navigation tokens. But I'm wondering if Francisco is going to be able to take out anything at all right now.
Sadly, I just don't think so.
Johnathan's doing such a good job of keeping away, pulling out any A-wing squadrons that become too damaged.
Round 5 here, he's got tokens to spare. Yeah, I think Johnathan has sealed this one up, and it is all over for Francisco. Unfortunately, there's just not a lot left that he can do in this situation. He was out-deployed, and his list was not able to deal with that fierce anti-meta list that Johnathan brought. Johnathan clearly studying the popular lists in the field and taking a list that could take them on. The great thing about Jonathan's list, though, is that it's not just good at knocking down Imperial lists. It's also got a really nasty anti-squadron component to it. So if he was confronted by, say, a Rebel list with the Avaris title and some B-Wings, those A-Wings would ensure that he had nothing to fear from those bombers. If he sees Reimer with bombers on the table, he can jump on those bombers and prevent them from tearing into his assault frigates. It's actually a pretty darn good all-comers list.
It looks like the first A-Wing squadron just went down. But again, as you predicted, too little, too late, it looks like. More anti-squadron fire going. Francisco not left with a lot of options, but he's not stopping either. If he has the shots on the A-Wings, he's going to take them. And Johnathan's just pulling the A-Wings to safety and securing those points.
Yep. He's got nothing to gain by losing A-Wings at this point. Not a lot to lose, but, you know, why have one of your heroic fighter pilots go down if it's not necessary?
They will all be getting medals at the award ceremony after this battle.
So I'm seeing a lot of discussion on the chat board about the Raider title. I think I may have jumped the gun a little bit in discussing that prematurely. I would just encourage people to wait for the FAQ, which should hopefully clear up and resolve the issue. I don't have the cards in front of me, and I don't want to talk out of turn before we really sit down to officially, discuss the implications of this, new crop of cards. I'm sure there'll be a lot of things about Wave 2. And I understand that after the massing of Sullust, the cards are already in some players' hands. Hopefully it shouldn't be too much more time before the wave is released to the general public. I think it'll be very soon, and there'll be an FAQ to follow shortly after that. So hold off on any major rulings. I'm mostly just commenting on a game rather than in my capacity as a rules arbiter at this point. So take anything I say here with a few grains of salt at least. Because we're going to really have to sit down and carefully analyze things, as we always do when it comes time to make official rulings.
You're not wearing the black shirt right now.
I'm not wearing the black shirt. I'm wearing the gray shirt. I'm telling terrible jokes. Or that was yesterday. Gypsy Prince says Alex's voice sounds shot. Well, that's what you get for partying with Australians after an million-hour X-Wing tournament. It's been a great World Finals this year. A lot of people, a lot of excitement, a lot of great after-hours action after the games are done here. So I would encourage you, if you can make it out to Worlds, if you're able to do so, it's a great time here. If you love one of our games that we feature competitively, give it a shot. It's Roseville is a little cold this time of year. Minnesota's a little cold, although we've been having lovely weather. But the action inside is just incredible. It's been an amazing weekend so far, and several days to come of great tournament play.
So we're winding down the last match. The gladiators just kind of
they're so
slowly
out of
rolling
position
along,
here.
and they don't have an opportunity to get into position.
I got another question here on the forums. How much did Armada learn from X-Wing design when it was made? It seems to be an iteration, lots of slick stuff. I can tell you we learned a lot. It was fantastic to have, James and I worked on that game along with Christian, and we had the benefit of, at that point, several years of experience. I think 3 years of experience, combined X-Wing information. We understood what worked well, what little tweaks we could make. We built on a strong foundation. That being said, we want the games to feel very different, and I think that we've accomplished that as well. But our goal with Armada is to try to have the cleanest, tightest rule set we possibly can, to try to cover almost all of our bases in the rules reference guide, to learn from some of the confusions and inconsistencies and whatever lessons we were able to draw from many years of X-Wing design. Defense tokens, I thought, was a great evolution.
And there you go.
For a game where combat's supposed to feel more inevitable. And I think it's been called. They have they have seen that there's just no way for Francisco to win here. And he did manage to take down an A-Wing, but spectacular play for Johnathan. And Francisco had a wonderful run. I mean, he was top of the tournament by far coming into this round, but Johnathan just had the perfect counter to his list. And all over. I think we have certainly got here on our hands a new first ever Armada World Champion, Johnathan Reinig.
Well, we do have to. Does he have enough points? That
he has a full 10-point victory, so that puts him at 42 tournament points. His closest competitor is only going to be able to get to 40. There's no way that Johnathan can lose it at this point. He has secured victory. I'm not sure he knows that. He's got to be feeling pretty good. But as soon as this round winds down, we're going to be able to declare a champion here. And it's going to be Mr. Johnathan Reinig. Top 16 in X-Wing, and a new Armada World Champion. And of course, top table Francisco Menendez also made the cut in X-Wing. Two spectacular players having a great couple of tournaments here today.
But the force was with Johnathan.
Absolutely. Commander Stewart throwing out a thank you for the commenting and running a great event. You're welcome, Commander Stewart. This is really our pleasure. I mean, this is a time for us to really see the work that we've done all year come to fruition, see a lot of people get excited about our games, meet all of our fans. It's a real pleasure for me to see people playing the games that I've done development for and put faces to names. And, I just think it's a spectacular event. It's my pleasure to be here, and I'm glad that everybody here and at home watching is having a good time and enjoying the show.
Me too. I'm a Star Wars junkie, and I've loved the movies my whole life, and the game is fantastic, and so it's been a privilege to be able to commentate on and see the top players, see how much better they are than me.
Well, that's the thing too. It can be a little intimidating when you see the level of play that takes place at these World Championships. But I would say don't let that put anybody off, because we had 296 players here, and obviously only 16 made the final cut, but there were all levels of play. I saw young kids, I saw brand new players, veteran players, everybody can come here and have a good time. That's a great community. Very kind, very polite. And again, if this is something you're interested in doing, if you're watching and you're curious, check out those local gaming stores. Check out what events are near you in your area. We're trying to expand organized play, support, and coverage all over the United States and all over the world. In fact, if you're watching this from somewhere else, we ship those kits all over the place. We've had international champions come here to compete, and those are people who have gone through their own country's circle of tournaments. So check it out. If it's something you're at all interested in, it's a real blast. It's a whole world waiting out there for you, and it starts at your local gaming stores where all this action begins.
And something I've heard one of the players say, and something that I agree with, whether I win or lose, I always have fun playing.
Absolutely. I mean,
and
that's
a great game.
Bottom line.
It's just a fun game to play.
Yep.
And so why not play it? Why not try a tournament?
Absolutely. If it's something you're at all interested in, give it a shot. You might find you like it more than you expected to.
So that was the last round of the Armada tournament, 5 rounds total, and
we will return with the award ceremony when the round is complete. Of course, due to the tournament structure, we have to wait until all the results are in instead of having a definitive final match. But we'll be back to crown our champion in just a few minutes. Thank you so much for watching.